They thought he was just another charity case until his voice shattered every assumption in the room. What happened next would turn a privileged Georgia school upside down and make them question everything they thought they knew about talent. Tyler Williams adjusted the oversized blazer that hung like a tent around his 13-year-old frame, the fabric scratching against his neck as he stood backstage at Decatur Academy's annual spring showcase. The borrowed jacket smelled of mothballs and someone else's cologne, a sharp, expensive scent that reminded him he didn't belong here. Through the heavy velvet curtains, he could hear the polite applause following another performance by the Whitmore twins, their violin duet as pristine and predictable as their matching pearl earrings. Mrs. Randall, the music teacher, barely glanced his way as she checked her clipboard. Her manicured nails tapped an impatient rhythm against the metal surface, each click a tiny hammer, driving home the message that he was an inconvenience, a box to check off rather than a student to nurture. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed with the same frequency as the anxiety humming in his chest. "You're up next," she said without looking at him, her voice carrying the tone she might use to announce the janitor's arrival. "Keep it short. We have real performers waiting." Tyler's worn sneakers squeaked against the polished floor as he shifted his weight. The sound echoed in the narrow backstage area, bouncing off walls lined with framed photographs of past graduating classes. Hundreds of smiling faces, not one that looked like his. His fingers found the small cross pendant hanging beneath his shirt, a gift from his foster sister Maya before she aged out of the system. For protection, she had whispered that last night, though they both knew some things couldn't be protected against. The curtains parted with a whisper of fabric, and Tyler stepped into the harsh stage lights. The gymnasium had been transformed for the evening. Rows of folding chairs arranged in perfect lines where parents sat in their designer clothes, smartphones ready to capture their children's moments of glory. The air conditioning hummed overhead, but sweat still gathered at the base of Tyler's neck as hundreds of eyes focused on him with the casual curiosity reserved for zoo animals. "This is our charity case now?" someone whispered from the third row, the words carrying clearly in the acoustically perfect space. A woman in pearls leaned toward her neighbor, stage whispering behind her program. "I heard he's from that group home on Ponce. You know, the one they're always collecting donations for." Tyler's hands trembled as he approached the microphone stand. The metal felt cold against his palms, slick with the nervous sweat of previous performers. Principal Davidson stood at the side of the stage, his arms crossed, checking his watch with the obvious impatience of a man who had more important places to be. "Ladies and gentlemen," Tyler began, his voice barely above a whisper. The microphone crackled with feedback, drawing scattered chuckles from the audience. "I'd like to sing—" The sound cut out completely. Mrs. Randall's hand hovered near the audio controls, her expression one of manufactured concern. "Technical difficulties," she announced to the crowd with a helpless shrug. "These old systems, you know how it is." But Tyler had grown up in a world where microphones failed when certain voices tried to use them, where technical difficulties seemed to plague only certain students. He'd learned to project from the back rows of classrooms where teachers forgot to call on him, to speak up in rooms where others pretended not to hear him. He stepped away from the dead microphone and began to sing. The first note cut through the gymnasium like a blade through silk. Pure, raw, and achingly beautiful, it rose from somewhere deep in his chest and filled every corner of the massive space. The whispered conversations died instantly. The rustling of programs stopped. Even the air conditioning seemed to pause, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Tyler's voice climbed and soared, each note precise yet dripping with an emotion that most of these privileged children had never experienced. It was the sound of late nights in group homes, of birthdays forgotten and promises broken, of dreams clutched tight against a world that insisted they weren't meant for him. But it was also hope, fierce, unbreakable hope that refused to be silenced no matter how many microphones failed. In the audience, smartphones appeared as if by magic. Mrs. Peterson in the fifth row opened her camera app without thinking, her finger hitting record as Tyler's voice wrapped around a gospel song her grandmother used to sing. The melody was familiar, but this version, this raw, powerful interpretation, was something else entirely. When the last note faded, the silence stretched for what felt like hours. Tyler stood alone on the stage, his chest rising and falling with each breath, his worn sneakers planted firmly on the polished wood. The audience sat frozen, as if they'd witnessed something that couldn't be processed by their usual social circuits. Then the applause began. Scattered at first, uncertain, but building like a gathering storm until it filled the gymnasium with thunder. Some people stood, others sat transfixed, their assumptions crumbling around them like poorly constructed walls. Tyler walked off the stage on shaking legs, past Mrs. Randall's slack-jawed expression, past Principal Davidson's furrowed brow. He didn't stop until he reached the boys' locker room, where he finally allowed himself to collapse onto a bench, his borrowed blazer falling open as he tried to catch his breath. The rusty pipes groaned overhead as he turned on the faucet, splashing cold water on his face. In the cracked mirror above the sink, he saw the same reflection that had looked back at him that morning. The same dark skin, the same uncertain eyes, the same kid from the group home who wasn't supposed to dream too big. But something had changed. In that moment on the stage, when his voice had silenced a room full of people who'd never seen him as anything more than a charity case, something fundamental had shifted. He just didn't know it yet. Outside the locker room, Mrs. Peterson was uploading the video to TikTok with trembling fingers. She'd intended to post a quick clip of her own daughter's piano performance, but something about Tyler's voice had bypassed her usual social media calculations. The caption she typed was simple. "This kid, just wow." By the time Tyler had dried his face and straightened his blazer, the video was already spreading through the digital universe at light speed. 30 views became 300, 300 became 3,000, and by midnight it would hit 3 million. In Atlanta, 45 minutes south on I-285, music producer Marcus Chen was scrolling through TikTok in his Buckhead studio when the video stopped him cold. He'd been searching for fresh talent for months, sitting through dozens of auto-tuned auditions and manufactured personas. But this was the real thing. This was lightning in a bottle. Marcus had grown up in these same Georgia suburbs, had attended a private school not unlike Decatur Academy. He remembered the subtle racism, the casual dismissal of anyone who didn't fit the predetermined mold. He also remembered the talented kids who slipped through the cracks because no one bothered to listen. He played the video 3 more times, each viewing confirming what his trained ear had caught immediately. This wasn't just talent. This was the kind of once-in-a-generation voice that could change everything. The kind of voice that made careers and broke barriers and reminded the world why music mattered. By Sunday morning, Marcus was already in his car, driving north toward Decatur with a contract in his briefcase and a plan forming in his mind. Tyler spent the weekend in the group home's common room, fielding congratulations from his housemates and trying to ignore the strange fluttering in his chest every time someone mentioned the performance. Miss Jennifer, their house supervisor, had heard about Friday night from the school and couldn't stop beaming with pride. But Tyler had learned not to get his hopes up too high. Good things had a way of disappearing from his life just when he started to believe in them. Monday morning arrived gray and drizzly, the kind of Atlanta weather that made everything feel muted and uncertain. Tyler walked into school expecting the weekend's excitement to have faded, for the brief spotlight to have moved on to someone more deserving. He was unprepared for the crowd gathered around the main entrance, their faces pressed against the glass doors like fish in an aquarium. A sleek black sedan sat in the circular driveway where the school buses usually parked. Not a limousine exactly, but something close, the kind of car that whispered money and power and serious business. 2 men in expensive suits stood beside it, checking their phones with the casual confidence of people who were used to being the most important presence in any room. Tyler Williams. The taller of the 2 men approached as Tyler tried to slip through the crowd unnoticed. His handshake was firm, professional, the kind that sealed deals and changed lives. Marcus Chen, Crimson Records. "We need to talk." Principal Davidson appeared as if summoned, his usually immaculate tie slightly askew, sweat beading on his forehead despite the morning chill. Mrs. Randall hovered behind him, her expression cycling rapidly between confusion, embarrassment, and something that might have been panic. "Gentlemen, perhaps we could handle this through proper channels," Davidson said, his voice pitched higher than usual. "Student confidentiality, you understand." Marcus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Davidson, right? Class of '89? Your name's on the alumni wall." He gestured toward the school's main building. "I graduated 2 years behind you. Funny how some things never change around here." The principal's face went pale. Marcus turned back to Tyler, who stood frozen in the morning drizzle, his backpack hanging from one shoulder like he might need to run at any moment. "Tyler, we'd like to offer you a recording contract. The initial advance is $250,000, with performance bonuses and royalty percentages that could make you very wealthy very quickly." The words hung in the air like smoke from an expensive cigar. Tyler felt his knees wobble slightly, the numbers too large to process immediately. Around them, students pressed closer, their phones out, recording everything for social media posterity. Mrs. Randall stepped forward, her smile suddenly bright and encouraging. "Tyler, honey, this is wonderful news. I always knew you had something special. Maybe I could help coordinate your development program? I have extensive experience with young performers." Tyler looked at her for a long moment, remembering Friday night's technical difficulties, remembering the months of being overlooked in music class, remembering her voice in the hallway after his performance. He was born in foster care and dreams of Grammys. "It's almost sweet." He said nothing. Marcus pulled out his phone and played a video, Tyler's performance, already viewed over 5 million times. "This is the most shared audition video in TikTok history. You've got 3 major labels in a bidding war, and we haven't even met you properly yet." He paused, looking directly at Principal Davidson and Mrs. Randall. "Tyler is about to become the most famous alumnus this school has ever produced. I suggest you remember that." The contract signing happened in the principal's office, with Tyler's assigned social worker present to review the terms. The numbers were staggering, not just the advance, but the production budget, the marketing commitment, the tour support. Marcus explained each section patiently, making sure Tyler understood exactly what he was agreeing to. "There's one condition," Tyler said quietly as he held the pen above the signature line. His voice was steady, but his hand trembled slightly. "My foster sister Maya, she's 18 now, aging out of the system. She believed in me when nobody else did. Whatever happens, I want her taken care of. College, housing, whatever she needs." Marcus nodded. "Done. We'll set up an educational trust." Tyler signed his name in careful script, each letter a small revolution. 12 months later, Tyler Williams stood on the stage at the BET Awards, the spotlights painting golden circles on his custom-designed sneakers. The shoes were his own creation, a collaboration with a major athletic brand that had netted him another 7-figure deal. On the giant screen behind him, a photo slideshow played during his performance. Tyler in the recording studio, Tyler meeting other artists, Tyler visiting schools to talk about music and dreams and never giving up. And there, in the final slide, was Maya in her cap and gown at her college graduation, beaming as she held her diploma. But it was Tyler's voice that commanded the arena's attention. Stronger now, more polished, but still carrying that raw emotional power that had first silenced a gymnasium full of privileged parents. When he hit the final note of his Grammy-nominated single, 20,000 people rose to their feet as one. In Decatur Academy had quietly renamed their auditorium the Tyler Williams Performance Center. A small plaque by the entrance told his story in sanitized school board language, but the real memorial sat in a glass case in the lobby. Tyler's old student ID badge, laminated and faded, with a photo of a nervous 13-year-old who'd learned to dream bigger than anyone thought possible. Mrs. Randall had taken early retirement 6 months after Tyler's breakthrough, citing stress and health concerns. Principal Davidson had been transferred to a smaller district after an investigation into the school's diversity and inclusion practices revealed a pattern of overlooked talent and systematic bias. But Tyler rarely thought about any of that anymore. Late one evening, after a sold-out show in his hometown of Atlanta, he stood alone in his tour bus holding that old student ID in his hands. Through the tinted windows, he could see the city lights stretching toward the horizon, each one representing someone with their own dreams, their own struggles, their own moments of being invisible. "I promise," he whispered to the night, to Maya, to every kid still waiting in the shadows to be seen. "I'll make sure they notice the next one sooner." The bus pulled away from the venue, carrying Tyler toward his next destination, his next audience, his next chance to prove that talent doesn't come with a dress code or a zip code or a certain color. Skin. In the distance, a train whistle echoed across the Georgia landscape, the same sound that had lulled him to sleep in the group home, the same sound that had once represented escape, but now sounded like coming home. Talent never asks permission to exist. It only asks for the chance to be heard. Remember this story the next time you're tempted to look past someone who doesn't fit your expectations. you might be missing the voice that could change everything.